Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for a webinar focused on the trace tools for detecting illicit money flows. My name is Bogdan Adamek. I'm from Aston University, United Kingdom. Before we proceed, I'd like to inform you that we are recording this session. The recording will be available as part of the trace training resources online for those who wish to revisit this webinar or for the benefit of those who couldn't join us today. The aim of today's webinar is to explore the capabilities of trace tools in detecting and understanding illicit money flows, a critical issue that affects global security and governments. I hope our discussion will provide valuable insight into the cutting-edge tools developed by the TRACE project, coordinated by Coventry University. 17 partners from 8 European countries are involved in the TRACE project. The partners come from academic, policy, and law enforcement backgrounds, combining law, technology, and social sciences expertise. TRACE is a fine example of a consortium where legal, social, and technological partners work together to develop AI tools which will be beneficial for investigators. I hope you can see our brief agenda of today's webinar. We are fortunate to have a panel of experts, Professor Umut Turkson, Professor Lena Benson, and Thomas Havranek. They will guide us through the TRACE project, its applications, practical demonstrations, and also they will share their knowledge and practical experience with us. Let's begin by welcoming Professor Umut Turkson, the TRACE coordinator from Coventry University, United Kingdom, who will provide us with an overview and insights of the TRACE project.
Thank you, Bogdan.
Please, Umut.
So this is our first webinar as part of our work package 9, and I'll give you a quick overview of the aims and objectives of the project, and we'll focus on some of the fundamental tasks that are involved in making sure that our solutions are based on rule of law and fundamental rights. This is our website for the project, where you'll see a number of policy briefs and news about our findings and recommendations, and also information about our partners. And we set out to achieve these 5 objectives. And these objectives were driven by, in fact, empirical work that we've done in a previous project with 19 law enforcement agencies across Europe. And the main challenge that we knew, apart from human factors, was not having access to a technological tool that would help them in a real time kind of understand what's going on in illicit money flows. So we set out to achieve these 5 objectives by number of work packages, 3 of which run throughout the project timeline. I will give you just a briefing about the remaining, and then I will explain a bit more about the ethical, legal, and social impact and how we've ensured that our tools are in line with those standards. So we set out, thanks to Vises and other colleagues, understanding what are the user requirements in investigating and using technological tools for illicit money flows. And we established our use cases and how they kind of manifest in the current present legal frameworks across various jurisdictions. And one of our technology partners, Austrian Institute of Technology, established the data acquisition services, and other partners put in place analytical services and system integration and development of and validating the TRACE technological tools. And work package 7, which is still continuing, dealt with optimization of information sharing practices, including electronic evidence, And finally, work package 9, which this webinar is part of training and collaboration. So I want to give you just a brief overview of what are some of the challenges and risks of using any artificial intelligence technology, and then focus on what we've done in order to mitigate some of those risks, creating an artificial intelligence tool. And I'm going to use the example of ChatGPT. Most people have heard of ChatGPT. So what are some of the risks of using such tools? Firstly, you're accessing such tools through the internet. Therefore, like any other system operating on the internet, it will be, to a great extent subject to hacking. So you need to be careful about that. And if you are using personal information as part of that work, you need to make sure not only what you put in is not private information and you have the consent and authority to use it, but also what the AI system extracts from its database, put perhaps by others, have been collected and put in there in line with the rule of law. So that's, for a law enforcement personnel perspective, is really, really important that you pay attention to that. The second is both financial and legal liability, of course, for LEAs, because in an investigation, someone's liberty is at stake, so the bar is very high. In terms of financial liability, it's very small that the service provider will cover. Again, I'm only using one example, ChatGPT. It's capped at $100 US for any liability that may arise, and claim must be made within 12 months. So that's kind of not going to really touch anything in terms of the liability of the company providing the software and the AI tool. Bias is something we've spent a lot of time, that the data within those systems are reliable. So that's another risk, that, it could be bias, information and data that is available in the system. And IP infringements, again, we don't know if information we extract from such systems are protected by IP laws, and of course, issue of plagiarism, whether what is being put in there by someone has had the right attribution, etc. And confidentiality, of course, anything you feed into that systems will be recorded, and if you put in inadvertently even some personal data in there, it will be available to the next user. So we've kind of paid attention to all these things when we're creating our system. So if we turn back to kind of ourselves, to the TRACE project, what are the legal and ethical standards and how we navigated these? So our work really essentially started by standards that are actually not very recent. These, they're called general guidelines, have started since the 1950s, mainly from the robotics sector studies. And we kind of looked at those, and what happened with these is that they were instilled eventually into more, let's say, harder forms of rules rather than just recommendations. And these are some examples as these ethical and legal kind of principles have developed over in a chronological order. And what has happened in the end is that once you analyze comparatively all these different standards, you come up with 5 key areas, which is transparency, rule of law, which covers justice, fairness, and independence, non-malfeasance, responsibility, and privacy. So I think it will become apparent in a minute how these actually were kind of featured in more legalistic documents. So if we go, as I said, the legal instruments in the EU, we have the AI Act. So it is based on risk-based approach to use of and creation of AI. And obviously using AI for law enforcement purposes are going to be more subject to scrutiny, without a doubt. So we need to show how we would mitigate such risks. And some of those are listed in the slide I'm showing you. This kind of pretty much summarizes what legal instruments would be applicable for law enforcement purposes using AI. So we can't just look at the AI Act in isolation. Just like the GDPR, these legal instruments talks about the acquis communautaire or the EU law, and this AI regulation is part of that broader legal framework. So we need to holistically look at all other relevant legal provisions. So you can see in the slide, we have a number of human rights related legal instruments. Of course, the case law, the decisions of the relevant courts we need to pay attention to, as well as other legal instruments such as the Law Enforcement Directive. So how does, for example, the AI Act safeguard the citizens and the users, the law enforcement agencies, and anyone else implicated or concerned about the use of AI? So, for example, Article 9 of the AI Act talks about risk management system. So this is what we engage with in our project to identify, evaluate what would be the foreseeable risks and how we would put in place measures to mitigate these risks. Again, data governance and management under Article 10, talks about training, validating, and testing of data sets. So again, this is something we've been engaged with our, not only just on desk work, but with our pilots, we've been addressing these issues. Ensure transparency in data input, processing, and output to users. That's again provided under Article 13, and technical documentation is provided again under Article 11. Human oversight and record keeping and accuracy and robustness and cybersecurity are all kind of informing principles, benchmarks for our technological tools. In terms of practical terms, other than just the paper exercise, we've subjected our work to a scrutiny by an independent ethics advisory board who had access to our deliverables, reports, and work and given us constructive feedback. And lastly, we did a matching exercise with input from both technological tech partners as well as LEA partners. And we've been keeping an eye on the kind of the horizon as to what other tools and developments may be coming our way, and as well as the legal provisions that may be coming our way. So it is an ongoing project in terms of the last point I'm making in this slide. And this is an example of our matching exercise, how we conducted it. So if you're talking about Article 12, traceability, these are the set of questions we've used in order to correspond to the features of our technical tools, and also if they are considered in any other task that would be listed under deliverables. And we've asked all partners to provide their input and observations in response to these questions in doing our assessment. Again, as you will see, the legal requirements and provisions are listed on the very left column, and it corresponds to certain principles. And again, there will be corresponding questions, how we would assess where we stand in terms of risks and compliance in relation to those legal requirements. And we published a few things as far as we can, because a lot of our deliverables are confidential. So these are kind of publicly open available outputs and findings from our work, and you can refer to those if you wish. I'll stop there and invite anyone to ask questions. And thank you very much for giving me the floor.
Thank you, Umut, very much for your insightful presentation. If any questions you have, you can ask. We have a couple of minutes, or maybe we will move questions to our Q&A sessions, which will be after all our three presenters. So if you don't mind, now we will delve deeper into how trace tools can be applied in various scenarios. Professor Vladlena Benson from Aston University will take us through various use cases demonstrating the practical applications of trace tools across different scenarios. Dear Vladlena, the floor is yours.
I'm just double checking that you could see my screen, because once I'm in the presenter's mode, I can't see the rest of it. So
yes, we can see your slide, use case analysis.
Okay, fantastic. Give me 1 second.
Yes, the next one as well. Thank you.
Yes, give me one moment. It seems that it has gone out of the presenter's mode as it's supposed to be. Give me 1 moment. Okay, we are back in action. So thank you very much for joining this presentation, and thank you for giving me the opportunity for looking at the underpinning and sort of the initiation stage for delivering and developing our trace solution. So the part that drove the technical implementation of the tool that would allow law enforcement to create and evidence and look through the analysis of the criminal activity and generating the illicit money flows was sort of relied on the use case analysis. So we had kind of a two-step process as such. So the creation of the use cases was a two-step process. First of all, the first step was to collect the necessary background information, which was quite a time-consuming step because it involved meetings with LEAs, desk research, and review of the case studies that were delivered in our deliverable 2.6. Meetings with LEAs allowed us to ask them questions about the typical stages of investigations of the crimes being covered in the use cases, which makes for a more accurate and realistic representation of the investigative process of various crimes. This was not necessarily possible for all of the use cases, but was done if possible. Some of them were more easy to kind of lend themselves better into sort of delving into the details. Some of them were not as easy to untangle. So desk research involved finding basic information, for example, news reports and academic articles about the different types of crimes, to be able to provide context for their relevance in the project. A scope of the problem and the case studies were collected for our deliverable 2.6. It provided detailed information about real investigation and trials involving the crimes covered in the use cases, and ultimately helped us fill the gaps, which led to the next step of the information gathering methods. In the step 2, we created and have written up the use cases. This included introduction to the relevant type of crime, provided basic information about it, such as how prevalent it is, what are the typical targets, the broad phases of the crime. Next, we introduced the actors, which formed the set of people that would be involved in the crime and its investigation, usually a simplified version of events for kind of understanding and readability. We then outlined the broad stages of the use cases, which were based on the detailed about typical course of crime, investigations gathered, evidence, the background, and information steps. Finally, we formulated the use cases within the section about what the trace approach would be and how it would aid in the investigation that type of crime. So would it be able to do with the evidence, data collecting, and the investigation? So those were the two steps. We looked at the analysis of the use cases through the lens of regulatory regimes in the European space. You heard from Professor Turksen's presentation that there are a lot of areas and facets to those investigations. We looked at the anti-money laundering, countering the finance of terrorism forces. We presented a detailed case analysis of the key use cases proposed by the consortium. Those were specifically looking at several areas. For example, financing of terrorism investigations, analysis of property market transactions using cryptocurrency, cyber extortion, money laundering with stolen art and antiques, and online gambling for money laundering. These use cases were analyzed through the lens of regulatory regime, as I said before, specifically for the European space. And then we observed some of the similarities in the use cases and how money laundering activities were perpetrated. Ultimately, we wanted to see what were the data points that were either coherent or similar or divergent between the use cases, and that's how the trace solution requirements analysis was produced. So the first use case is the financing of terrorism. To face and untangle these networks, it is necessary to understand how financing of terrorism is undertaken. And the use case 1 explores a scenario in which the investigation into a suspected radicalized individual reveals communication and connections with others, as well as cryptocurrency transfers that are believed to be made to the organization. So trace in this case would facilitate collecting and analyze large amounts of data from social platforms, messaging services, and cryptocurrency or fiat money transfers. It is not as straightforward as it perhaps looks from the outside. So what we have done was to create the actors-based analysis of such use case. So as you could see on the right-hand side, or perhaps the other way around on your screen, we looked at the broad steps of the use cases as follows. We have several actors: Mona, Olivia, Ozzy, and those serve different roles or perform different roles in this use case. So as a broad sort of overview of the crime or of the investigative steps, we have Mona, who calls the police department to report her suspicion that her son has been radicalized. Olivia, on the sort of investigation side, begins gathering information about Ozzy, including social media, messaging app content provided by Mona. Social media and messaging app data are analyzed in detail to establish contact networks. And then additional data is collected, including that related to money cryptocurrency transfers. The trace technology ultimately facilitates the compilation and analysis of this vast amount of data and could be collected in a scenario such as one presented here. It would then be able to create a knowledge graph to help identify connections between the primary suspects and any other potential relevant people whom that can be investigated further to determine whether they serve a role in this particular organization or not. So we will talk about the knowledge graph in the next presentation, but I will plod on with the next use case of the ones that was selected for the trace analysis. So use case 2 is actually a very interesting one: web forensics for tackling terrorist investigations. The nature of the work involved in web forensics includes complex and creative solutions and methods that are designed to identify, collate, and present critical information from digital sources, such as computers, smartphones, servers, and networks. All of those need to be interrogated in the forensic investigations. Findings from these sources are then analyzed for the value chain investigations and as potentially substantive evidence for the purpose of crime prosecution. This technology is seen as a useful tool that can help LEAs solve complex cases and identify digital footprint, as shown in the next sort of fold out of the use case number 2. So the case that's in front of you has, as such, as one presented above, helps with the collection of vast amounts of information from a variety of sources, and the trace tool can help consolidate and analyze for connections and create a visual representations of those established connections. It is whether the suspects, the IT professional and investigation team are working together, or leading investigator looking at the stages of collecting of the relevant official and police information, looking at the house and band searches, requesting and analyzing of financial and communication information, identification of collected information, and looking at the assignment to other organization members, and of course, open intelligence collected on the suspects and other members, and further information requested is also connected on this specific use case. So there's quite a few pieces of information that is being linked together and fed into the knowledge graph, which Trace allows to leverage. Use case number 3 is a very sort of prolific and perhaps very popular use case, which we analyzed: money laundering through real estate transactions. The use case presents a scenario with actors that can capture a complex and representative scenario where the trace technologies and methods could enable credible narrowing of the source of income and assets, and also obtaining any available information that is able to link digital activity to a physical identity. So without those tools, LEA's investigation and gathering of evidence could be a very, very difficult task to link together the suspects, the clean, the dirty money, and identify the forensic evidence and collect it and preserve it. This is where our AI tools are so effective. Right, so use case 3 is, so we're looking at the source of illicit money funds. Trace here can assist with the investigation, gathering of evidence, mapping of connections of individuals, and movements of their assets, which are pivotal in effective investigation. Once the sources are identified, law enforcement agencies can initiate criminal proceedings on the perpetrator. So again, we have actors of compliance officer, solicitor, perhaps home buyer, seller, bank manager, real estate agents, all of those, both the people who report and who can look into the legitimacy of the transactions, are all linked together by the knowledge graph. Steps in the use case are: property purchase is made using Bitcoins or any other cryptocurrencies. The solicitor fails to spot the money laundering red flags, and the funds move through different channels. The compliance officer detects inappropriate sources of funds or money, and open source intelligence alerts investigators where then businesses, buyers, sellers, property, bank account, crypto wallets are linked together to provide solid evidence for investigators. So in total, we have 6 use cases, and I am on to the next case 4, which is cyber extortion and ransomware. We know that ransomware has been number one threat within the cybersecurity landscape. Therefore, the role of Trace is really important in identifying how to, let's say, investigate and identify the perpetrators of this crime. The use case steps through the detailed perhaps again sort of steps within the crime for investigators, and new technologies or procedures that could be supported through the online knowledge graph tool, which will help with the analysis and close the gap of the current investigative processes. So we have seen for sort of the screenshots of ransomware affected computers. We know that the ask is for a ransom to decrypt a specific asset. Very quickly after that, the ransom is well, very quickly, quite often the ransom is paid by the victim, and it is all done in cryptocurrency transactions. The ransomware is becoming more and more sophisticated, but here in front of you is the use case analysis 4, where we have several actors again that are involved in this specific crime. Victoria, the ransomware victim, Crimson, the cyber criminal launching the ransomware attack, Rasmund, the ransom as a service operator, and Brody, the actor broker and the party that independently finds vulnerabilities. It is interesting that this specific crime is usually sort of perpetrated from the commercially available ransomware tools and services in adversarial countries or APC agents and so on. It's not only one person who is perpetrating the attack. Let's say, as you could see, Crimson, Brody, Rasmund, and so on are involved in piecing together the different vulnerabilities and attack vectors for this specific crime. So, what does trace do, or what the trace approach does in this case? A number of techniques are identified that can help LEAs in investigating ransomware, and in particular to identify criminals involved in ransomware attacks. Could be analysis of records kept by the cybersecurity team within the victim organization, profiling criminals by the modus operandi, a forensic language analysis of the phishing emails, the ransomware notice, communications with criminals, etc. We also see identification and attribution of the malware code and exploitation techniques, and if there's exfiltration of data, trace the repositories where they go to as a storage. We also look at the OSNIT, which includes scanning the dark web for information of a legitimate business or users, and cross-referencing of information to build more complete picture of the criminal activity. Ultimately, to determine the source of the destination rather of the illicit money flows, the on-chain analysis of moving funds is extremely important. So our use case for analysis, the steps are: there are signs of attack reconnaissance, malware is delivered, the victim pays the ransom, if they do, and the funds move through different channels. Obviously, the victim has an option not to pay the ransom and sort of reconstruct or remediate the incident themselves or attack themselves. But in order for the crime to be reported and investigated, ideally, we need to look at the funds movement throughout. OSNIT alerts our investigators, and all of this is again supported by the techniques which are implemented within the knowledge graph of the trace. And finally, we are down to the last two use cases. One of them is money laundering with stolen art and antiques. It is interesting that this area has developed further over the last few years, so it's just an indicator that trace is quite future-proof, and looked at something that has came on the law enforcement radar quite recently. So money laundering through art and antiques appears to be rare. However, it is a crime that is involved usually in a network of other crimes. Evidence of it may be found in the course of a separate investigation into the crime, which produced the illicit funds, so-called predicate offense, that needed to be laundered. This use case presents a scenario in which a businessman purchases an art object, claiming that they are for decorating the company's office using funds embezzled from the company, and then he or she sells them to legitimate buyers to launder the funds. So this is what it looks like. We have actors: Bill, the businessman, Archibald, the art dealer, Milton, the middleman, Buster, the art buyer, and Natasha, the investigator. So Trace will be able to help sift through the transactions data and identify the transactions which add up to the suspected amount of illicitly obtained funds, and then help trace the money back to an origin point This is especially useful in cases where an intermediary or shell company is used to hide the identity of the buyer or seller, which is very typical. And Trace will also be able to help establish links between various actors and provide a visualization of those links. Again, all of this is done through the knowledge graph. Last but not least use case is our online gambling for money laundering. Online gambling is a growing market. At least 53 billion a year. We know that this number is going up. For this use case, we explore the use of online gambling by a large-scale drug dealer to launder money earned from his operation. For large sums of money, the process of laundering the funds involves founding an online casino in a regulatory haven and creating fake revenues which can be paid out to the owners as legal business processes. It is a very seamless operation. So the actors in this case are Charlie, the drug dealer, Nadine, the lead investigator, again, we meet her, Paul, the prosecutor, and Tito, the IT expert. The steps in this use case are collect information through open source intelligence and non-public sources, identify actors in the network, and I look at their personal and financial information. Again, linking banking accounts, casino accounts, cards, and the suspects is extremely, extremely important. All of this is done as such by the Trace. The volume of money laundering grows exponentially, and the objective of this project is to aid LEAs in their work of detecting, evidencing, and eventually prosecuting the IMF activities. So, to sum up today's presentation and sort of the overview of the use cases, which then are enabling us to deliver the technical solution for LEAs, the use cases show similarities in how money laundering activities are perpetrated. We map them out against the actors, against the unnecessary data points that need to be collected. The use case presented here show actors, data points, processes of criminal activities carried out online, and with the use of advanced obfuscation technologies such as cryptocurrency mixing and virtual financial assets. Trace offers assistance at almost all stages of the investigation, and in an intelligence scenario, the AI of Trace can help find the solution in almost all of those use cases, or hopefully in all of the use cases as such. So I would like to thank you. And just very quickly look at our consortium, because at this point I will hand over to our technical development team to talk us through the next step. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Benson, for that comprehensive explanation. And now, to give us a clear, practical picture of how these tools work in a real-world scenario, we invite Mr. Thomas Havranik, Managing Director of CIN Consulting from Vienna, Austria, who will lead an interactive session. Thomas will showcase the Trace tools in action, using the online gambling networks use cases as an example. Please, Thomas, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I'm sitting in Vienna. I try to share my screen. If the background noise is too loud, please let me know, then I have to close the window. So can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. So let me start with the basic idea of Trace and where we came from a technological point of view. Currently, in Europe, the mainly used tools are tools that were developed in the United States, which is per se not a bad thing. But of course, the focus is on the very specific jurisdiction necessities of the United States. Having said that, these tools have, in my opinion, two disadvantages. They are very complex and they're very expensive. And so we tried to find something or to build something that allows to be simple and very efficient without blowing up the costs. So the tool itself is driven by finding a simple user interface and simple possibilities for the users to upload data, to interact with the tool, and to get the feeling for the data they analyze. Sorry. So I'm already logged into the tool. The login process is something that will be done by the respective partners who use the tool. Usually, we take the example like it works in our jurisdiction in Middle Europe. In any authority, the authority defines who are the people who should be allowed to access any given tool investigators use, and they determine who will get an access or not and under what circumstances. So we just provide a general access point with a login via email or via a username and the password. The rest in the background has to be done by the respective authority. When you log in, the first thing you see is your library, we call it. The library is basically nothing else than a literally electronic library where you can upload and establish your cases. This is already something quite unique for tools like that. You don't need another expert who processes your files. You don't need another expert who is establishing the tool and the content and load up the content and prepare it for you. It can be done by the user, her or himself. Again, having said that, we have to be clear. Why do we do it like this? The trace tool is currently on a technical level where it can easily read out the standard file formats, which is PDF files, which is Microsoft Office files, and Microsoft Outlook files. Why that? Because also, again, in the experience we have, these are the major formats you will always find and you will majorly deal with. If you need other formats, as an authority, we can train the tool or we can use a pre-processing tool to help with that. As soon as you start to work with it, the first thing you see is the projects you already have uploaded. Like you see our casino cases, one is here, and one is here where we extracted all bank transaction and mobile phone data. And then if you would have a new case, you would upload it like here and say, this is my new project. I give it a title. I can describe the project for anyone who needs to enter it as well. And then I can save it. And then it would look like that. So when you go into a project, I start with the normal text analysis. You open the file, and the first thing you see is the user interface with the standard dashboard where you immediately can start to work. The different tasks and tabs of the tool, the main tabs are on the left side, dashboard, documents, archive, and IBIS, which I will explain within the next minutes. Now, the dashboard works already with with natural language processing and entity extraction and with the knowledge graph technology. What does it mean? You have here the detected name and entities. This is a dashboard with 3 different entities to be retrieved from the data. So the tool tries to understand what is a person, what is an organization, what is a location. Why do I say tries? Because in every given case I worked with, and I do that now since 25 years, no intelligence will always get every name, every location, every organization correct. And that's why we choose to use the knowledge graph where we can interact with that to make that better and make that more accurate. So before I go into the single entity extraction dashboards, let me give you a quick introduction to the dashboard system itself. So you have here the named entity, detected named entities. So then we have a dashboard for the file system. There you see the files you uploaded. Why do we do that? The idea behind it is that if you have a file already on another system, like a hard drive or a server, you can zip the whole thing and then it will upload it with the exactly same structure as you would find it on your storage system. The next thing we did is a very simple terminology search where you can just go in and quickly search for every term that comes into your mind or that you have read or that you have heard of or that informant have given you to see if any of these words appear in your files or in any of your documents. Then you have a text preview search where you basically can do the same. You can use search terms and see if they are somewhere in the text. And so you see already that they are everywhere. There's Rhino. It immediately lights it up and gives you a quick overview about the paragraph where it's seen. In the email view, yeah, that's not work. Sorry, that's not working in here. I show it on another one. Then you have user nodes, where if you would have user nodes, you can list them here so that you can search from user nodes. And then you have the history. The history is basically the log system and the control system. Everything that anyone does will always be logged in. So you can see the date, the timestamp, the username, what did they do, what was the request, and what was the IP address they accessed the system through. So this is the dashboards that we already pre-made for the user. Of course, any user can say, or any authority can say, I don't want some dashboards of that. I don't need them. And then we can individualize it. But what you also can do, and that's a quite unique thing, you can build your own dashboard. So you can say, I don't need, for example, 3 detected name and entities. I only want a dashboard that's, for example, the way I work. I only select the emails that I find and the people that I find related to the emails. And so I create a new dashboard. So then it says it's created, and then hopefully it works. And then I see only 2 entities to be extracted. And I can play that in all kinds of multiple variations. I can say I want 1 entity up to 6 entities extracted, and therefore build my dashboards. Why do we do that again? Because I learned from the way I worked within teams that everyone has a different access. So I'm a person that always start with emails and people. Others start with organizations. Others start with locations. And depending on the case, of course, you might start with IP addresses, especially when you talk about online casinos. So it gives you a lot of flexibility that you, in my knowledge, you will not find in other tools that are currently on the market. So anyway, if we have our dashboards and we start to search for things, we then can find out, for example, that you see already here, the system finds 2 names. They seem to be the same person. So Kalman Thomas and Kalman Thomas Daniel is probably the same person. And now you can directly access the so-called knowledge graph and say, I have here an alias name, and the alias name should be Kalman Thomas Daniel. Save that. And then you see immediately the system reacts. Kalman Thomas Daniel is not there anymore. The same person is Kalman Thomas. So you also here can interact with the system, and that's where you start to add knowledge. That's where you start to train the system on a case. One important thing I have always to say, we currently run 2 actual cases with the Austrian prosecution, and they understood when they learned about the tool, they understood also it's important to start the earlier the better. So if you start with a case from the beginning of the investigation, and like in one case with is becoming quite big, the prosecution's file has currently about 80 to 100 documents, and that's something you can deal easily with and can start to train and learn the system and teach it your knowledge. If you have 10,000 documents, it might be a little bit more complicated. That said, the experience is also that in a lot of cases, it's only about extracting certain entities to work as fast as possible. Now, staying with our friend Kalman Thomas, we just want to see where he and the word Rhino is appearing. So we see it's 5 documents that were found. So now I want to see five documents out of 82. I want to go to the documents, and I can see there's one big one. And if I click here, I can read the document. I can make here a tagging system. I can make stars and everything. I can start with the knowledge graph that says I can add people, I can add locations, I can add other stuff. I can also go into a text view. In the plain text view, I again see that the system recognizes certain entities. That's not the ones that are colored. And it thinks it recognizes entities, like the ones that are saying that might be a location, but they haven't been confirmed. So now if I click on Vienna and I see Vienna location, so the system thinks the location, I can say, yeah, you're right, there's a location. And then Vienna always becomes green, so you know you have confirmed entities in your report. Let's see if I can also search within the system. Yeah, and everywhere is Rhino, then it starts up. And this is how you can start to search the documents. You can add notes here, so you can type in stuff that you find interesting. We have custom tags, we have risk management tags, we have suspicion tags where we can add them as well, the ones you can create. And that's how you can go quite fast through the different documents. So that's basically all you need to search text documents. And I come back to the survey that was mentioned before, and the survey confirmed our idea at the very beginning by saying that out of 14 police authorities with 52 or 50 something interviewed investigators, the average number of evidence they found was 90% in text documents and about nearly 80% in emails. So that's why our whole emphasis is on this idea to search text very fast and very quickly. This one. Yeah. So now another thing that if you go in the dashboard and click on the certain entities and not only write them in, then you see also the entities that it finds within the document up here, and you can see I want to look at every Kalman Thomas Daniel, and it will highlight it and guide you directly to the page where you find this name. So you see it's on page 9 of 92 pages, but you also can flip to the page where it's standing on the next time. So it's on 2 pages, obviously. And if I go on another page, so I have it here. So you can then flip through the document page by page if you want to read in the content, or you can go directly to the search term that you've looked for if you don't want to read a whole thing. So we have, for example, a typical primary investigation report in Austria contains not only the company registry data, it has social security data, it has the address data, it has a report of the police. So these reports have minimum 300 to 400 pages. And of course, you don't want to read them all. You want to get to the point. And with this system, you can go very fast to exactly that point. Then the archive again is nothing but that's where you upload the documents, and it can help you to download things. It can, if there still would be something processed, it would show it here. So if you go into the single files, you see the size of each document, you see how many pages it contains, and if it was processed or not. And then in Iris, that's the visualization tool. What does that do? It visualizes all the data that has been confirmed and that has been embarked from being information that you received to be knowledge, where you know this is the person, this is connected, and this is how the structure or the network works. You can work within a thing, you can restructure it, you can say, let's go again, there's Mr. Kalman, say there's, no, now I lost him. Sorry for that. I can say that this is important, and I want to see the whole structure out of his perspective. So the whole thing changes, so you can make all kind of analysis in here. You can see what's the shortest link between these two guys, Mr. Kalman and Mr. Thomas. Then it zooms in and fades in and out, or it shows it like this. You can try to find it on map view. If there is a map view, yes, there is. So you see also the addresses, if we have them, where these people are sitting, and you can go into, oops, sorry, it goes too fast. But you can go and see that right on the street names where we found addresses. And then you can go back to your search. The advantage of this very dynamic visualization is that it's not static. So normal visualization systems, you can say, I want to see the structure of a company, and you get a static picture, and then you can print it out. But you cannot work within the visualization itself, which is another unique selling point, in our opinion, that we built into Trace, that you can analyze and search within the text, but you can also analyze and search within the visual result of your text analysis. Then you, of course, can here have certain options within the analysis. You can say you want to see only certain things. So you don't want to see any company, it would go in and out, but then, of course, there's no connection. And you can see what kind of shares you want to see. You have different filter systems. So there's all kind of things you can do to just get a picture of what's going on. So this is the main overview of the text analysis and how it works. And then I want to guide you quickly also through the transaction analysis. So there we have a typical bank account. It's from a bank group in Austria. And what we did, we built a dashboard similar to an Excel sheet. So you can use all kind of things in here. So I can try to find again a certain person. So this person is not here. Let's see. Oh, so maybe it's just because, let me see. We all filters. Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, no. So I was on the pick, not on the name. Sorry. So if you, for example, know there's a person called Max, so I want to see all the senders of money who start with the name Max. I can sort it here. I could say I want to sort it and the amount that they transferred, and I could also sort it for the currency. I can go for the data and so on. So again, here I have a lot of different ways I can look into transfers, which I need to do if there are a lot. So if we do, for example, the one we have now, we have bank accounts over 4 consecutive years, which is around 2,000 pages, and flipping to them by hand or as a PDF is possible, but not very efficient. Instead, I can immediately go after what we're looking for. So who is the sender of the money, who is the receiver of the money, and could look into that. So say city, and then I just see only these few transactions it did. The same thing I can do with mobile call logs, except that the data is not here for one reason. That's always the problem if developers work at the same time. We try to make presentations, but yeah, it should be. It's a very similar system. You see the number, you see the second number, you see the base stations, you see the start date, you see the end date, the timestamps, and it's the very same view as you would have it in the bank account transactions, and the same we're currently building for email. So the framework is already here, where you can do the same system of searching email data, not only within the text data, but also within this kind of view where you just go for the recipients, for the senders of the emails, whoever was copied into the email, if there was a certain subject you're aware of, or if there's a certain attachment that you found in the text analysis, And of course, these kind of dashboards will also then be integrated in a way that you can use them in any given case. We just separated them now because we're still working on the technological execution, but I guess you get an idea of what we're trying to do here. So yeah, that was an overview about what Trace is able to do, and to give you an idea how it's working and how simple it is. And yeah, I hope you understood everything, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Thank you, Thomas, very much for that engaging demonstration. I encourage our audience to think of questions, as we will soon open the floor for our Q&A session. This is a great opportunity to engage with our experts on specific worries you might have about the Trace tools and their applications. Please feel free to submit your questions through our webinar platform in Q&A section. Our presenters are here to provide further insight into the Trace tools and their impact on combating money laundering. Before we open the floor for your remarks and questions, I'd like to mention that we are conducting a brief questionnaire to gather your feedback on today's webinar. We collect feedback on the Trace tools intended to assess the level of user satisfaction with the tools and collect your input to further development of the technology. Your insights are available to us as they help provide future sessions and tailor them to better meet your needs. You can participate in this questionnaire by using the link that will appear on the chat shortly. And I ask Philip from Schneider from University of Applied Science for Public Services in Bavaria. Please, can you join us and tell a little more about questions and share the link?
Okay, thanks for the floor. Apparently, I just managed to do a short, just a QR code, so we can just show it to you. And I think it's just 3 minutes. It's a very short questionnaire, and it would be really nice of you to help us to improve the workshops and also the training materials. So thank you for your help. And I'll share the QR code just this moment. Hope you can see it now.
Yes, we can see
Okay.
it.
It's just password secured. The Trace Workshop 1 is the password for this session. So thanks a lot. And back to you, Bogdan.
Okay, thank you, Philip. Now let's proceed to our question and answer session. Please feel free to ask your questions, and our experts panel will do their best to provide your answers. Please raise your hand or ask questions in the Q&A section. Yes, Umut, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Bogdan. My question is to actually our colleagues who actually investigate such things. Obviously, Thomas first, but anyone else wants to chip in. Typically, how long does a case kind of take to resolve? What I mean is from the moment it starts till a conviction is secured. I know it varies, but typically, in your experience, how long it takes and how much time do you think you gain by using such a tool? Again, it's not going to be scientific, but what kind of help or complementary element does tools like Trace provide to investigators?
Please, our colleagues from LIAS, our LIAS law enforcement agencies, maybe you have the answer. Yes, please. Reinhard, yes, please.
Yes, I was wondering, this is a question to Thomas. Perhaps you could say a few words how these requirements that Umut pointed out at the beginning in his first presentation regarding, privacy, data protection, and confidentiality, how they are integrated or implemented in the tool. The tool is very comprehensive and is searching quite a lot of databases, but can you really provide for these criteria, for these quality standards in terms of privacy, and how are they implemented in the tool? Maybe you could say something about this. Thank you. That's my question.
Yeah, of course. So as I tried to point out, we can only provide the possibility how the tool is accessed. The rules about privacy and ethical behavior is always on the side of the authority who implements the tool.
Okay.
Why is that? Because if you, for example, have let's say a multinational investigation and 4 or 5 different layers have to access the same case file, we can only control through the history and the log system who's doing what. But of course, we cannot guarantee that someone is making a screenshot with a mobile phone camera. What we can see, if someone is printing out something or somebody's copying something, and then in the aftermath, we can say you shouldn't have done that. But that's with every tool like that. There's no tool that would raise a red flag, because otherwise you cannot do an investigation. So you have to rely on the authority, the police at the end of the day.
So it's at the end user's side to take care of that. So like ChatGPT sort of provides some nonsense or has a breach of IPR regulations, then it's the user's a problem to solve that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Please, more questions? Any questions, please? Or you can write your questions in. Yes, Moran, please.
Hi, thanks for this. It's great to see that it's already ongoing and operating. I was curious to know about the languages, because I know we have a partner that is busy with translations, but I haven't seen this option integrated into the system. So I was wondering on the plans for this, and how can other LEAs from other countries search in other languages or not?
So the partner you're addressing, his language translation system is related to the crawler. That is an own part of the tool that's not integrated directly. The crawler is something that would have to be presented in an own workshop. It's the possibility to crawl darknet and internet and then translate this data immediately in one process. For the text analysis tools and everything that runs along the side of natural language processing and so on and so forth, every tool has to be taught a language. So we try to teach it in advance certain languages, but otherwise then it will be taught with the implementation of the tool. So if we go to Estonia, for example, or if we go to Czech, we will have to teach the tool the language so that the whole artificial intelligence can learn it and can work with it. At this stage, it's focused on the languages that we have within the consortium, which I think is English, of course, German, Estonian, Czech, Spanish, I think, but that's work in progress. That's coming step by step.
Thank you, Maura. Thank you, Thomas. Umut, please.
Thomas, the interface of the trace tool, is it now in German and English currently?
To my best knowledge, yes.
Okay, but it would be easy to change the interface.
Yes, the interface to change
any language
is really just a matter of some hours.
Okay, great.
So we could get it in Spanish easily.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Thank you. Maybe some questions from our colleagues from law enforcement agencies about the tool. Okay, thank you very much. And As we approach into the end of our webinar, I would like to extend my gratitude to our presenters for their enlightening contributions, and to you, our audience, our partners, for your active participation. The fight against illicit money flows is a collaborative effort, and with tools such as Trace, we are better equipped to tackle these challenges. I also want to invite you all to join our next webinar, which will include a tabletop exercise involving our partners and members of the stakeholder board. This exercise will simulate real-world scenarios using the Trace tools to detect illicit money flows, offering a practical, hands-on experience to complement what we are already learned today. Additional details will be sent out shortly, but the seminars is scheduled on 26th of June next month. Thank you. I see some question in chat, sorry. Thank you. Thank you once again for your participation and engagement. We hope you found this section informative. Maybe any questions at the end of the seminar? If not, thank you very much again. Have a great day, and we look forward to seeing you at the next session. Thank you very much all.
Thank
Thank you very much. Enjoy the
Bye.
day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.